What's up, readers? It's Drew Marcy here for I Read Your Book, Episode 2. And today we're covering three kings, Diddy, Dre, Jay-Z, and hip-hop's multi-billion-dollar rise, written by Zack O'Malley Greenburg. Now, stay tuned because we're going to summarize the book and tell a lot of fun anecdotes, interesting stories about these three gentlemen, particularly Diddy, because he comes out just absolutely wild in this book. Jay-Z, Dre have great stories as well. So stay tuned. We're going to break it down in full. But without further ado, let's not waste your time. Roll into the intro. Three Kings book review. Let's go. Probably the biggest gut reaction you're gonna have reading this book is that there's many ways to skin a cat. All roads lead to Rome. There's many different avenues to get you to that 700 million plus mark, and all of these gentlemen have got there and many more millions coming along the way. Their traits and paths offer three distinct blueprints for aspiring entrepreneurs. Legendary lyricist Jay-Z plays business like a chess game, plotting moves years, perhaps decades in advance. Super producer Dr. Dre is a quiet, intuitive perfectionist prone to social anxiety. He waited to extend his brand until he found something just right with beats. Diddy is a charismatic and blustery impresario who has shilled for everything from high-end spirits to acne medication. If this was a Myers-Briggs personality test, all three of them would be in completely different categories. However, all of them expect the best in that 100 million plus level of quality that comes with running their business. Now, Diddy in this book definitely comes out as the wildest, most outspoken, over-the-top, outrageous version of this. Let me tell you a quick story about Diddy early in his career that's going to set the tone for the character you're going to see throughout reading this thing. All right, so it's the early 90s and Diddy has just been fired from Uptown Records. He's looking for investors for a new project that would become Bad Boy Records that we know. He's looking for a new job, essentially. He's unemployed, but in this story, he's right now talking to EMI, one of the biggest conglomerates in music, and he wants to be the vice president of urban music at EMI. So unemployed Diddy walks into the office of this billion-dollar media conglomerate and says, when you guys get into a room with all them suits and you're going to decide what you're going to pay Puff, just when you get to a number that you think is going to make Puff happy, get crazy on top of that. And when you're there, I want whipped cream and a cherry on top. One of the employees later on said that his initial feeling at hearing this was, this is the greatest thing I've ever experienced in my life. And by this point, the bosses in EMI were laughing, but Diddy was dead serious. I don't even want to think about the money. That shouldn't even be an issue, he said, leaning forward. Don't be coming at me with no money. Goodbye. Now, somewhat surprisingly, Jay-Z is not nearly over the top as this, but he has a similar way of conditioning the people he's working with to expect to bring him only the best of the best. Even back in the days as a drug dealer, Jay-Z would never cut the price of his crack cocaine to under $10. He never cut the price to $9. Sort of like an airline executive refusing to slash shares on unsold seats 2 hours before takeoff, Jay-Z didn't want to condition his customers to expect discounts. That's a philosophy that would follow him into the music business. Now, Dr. Dre doesn't want to condition his artists for anything less than the best, the artists that he's working with. In the mid-90s, he was scouting out a new artist named Snoop Doggy Dogg. And what Dr. Dre really wanted to look for was how Snoop would take directions in the studio. For Dr. Dre, that's the most important test. It's not about how talented you are, how cool you look. It's can you work with other people, specifically me as the producer. As Dre says, talent can get you in the door and that's great and all, but there are many other things to consider, like, do I even want to work with this guy? One of the reasons Eminem was able to get the Dr. Dre stimulus package back in the mid-90s was he played the role of an eager student. Dre showed me how to do things with my voice that I didn't know I could do. I'd do something that I thought was pretty good, and he'd say, I think you can do better. I mean, Dr. Dre is the type of leader and businessman that will go until it's done. He famously spent 79 consecutive hours in the studio. Now, this demand for excellence from the team is not just limited to Dr. Dre. Of course, our main character here, Diddy, has many great examples of this as well. Another crazy Diddy story. It's the mid-90s. It's the height of the Def Jam empire. This is the main competitor of Bad Boy. Diddy says, nobody is taking the holidays off this year. I don't want anyone leaving, even though it's the music industry practice at the time. Diddy's like, y'all ain't going nowhere. Diddy tells him, y'all mad as f, ain't you? You see me sitting here with my fur and all that, and you're like, f Puff. But you know what? I dare any one of y'all to come and get it. I dare one of you to work harder than me. I come in here and work harder than you in the day, then go to the club and work. You think I'm in the club getting drunk? I'm looking at who's dancing to what, figuring out what song is working in which way, and which DJ is making it hot. Tell me who's doing more than me. Needless to say, Diddy is wild in this book, but don't let this make you believe that he doesn't know when to pick the best and most professional people to work on a project and delegate. When it came to Sean John, his fashion line, which we all probably already know, it's very lucrative, Diddy oversaw the design and vision, once again making sure that he had total control over the product as well as over the use of his name and likeness. But he never got caught up in, okay, I have a clothing line, I'll put my mother to run it, I'll put my sister to be the designer. He's always done it in a real professional way with people who are experts and experienced in those businesses. Now, the ability to pick a pro team and get the highest quality professionalism out of them is something that Dr. Dre is absolutely synonymous for, and I'm going to tell you a crazy story about Jay-Z, Snoop, and Eminem, and Still Dre you probably never heard, but I just want to remind you, if this is your first time watching us, be sure to subscribe, and more importantly, join our Bell crew. Join the Bell family, our notification gang along with it. But without further ado, let's rock into Still Dre and the picking of a professional team that he is an expert at. All right, so crazy story about picking a team from the Dre perspective. Now, we all know the song Still Dre, probably already know that it's written by Jay-Z. What you may not know, we learned in this book, is that there was actually a competition between Jay-Z, Snoop Dogg, and none other than Eminem to write this song. Dr. Dre pits these three titans, literally one of the greatest rappers of all time, if not the greatest Jay-Z, one of the greatest rappers of all time, if not the greatest Eminem, and one of the most iconic rap artists of all time, and Dr. Dre's pretty much longest collaborator at this point in Snoop Dogg. And Dr. Dre still has a competition to see who writes the best verse and who's gonna have the bars for my first single and my second album, The Chronic 2001. The thing behind this thinking is all of these guys know how to identify an asset and how to exploit it to the best level. Furthermore, often when it comes to businesses as opposed to just artists, they're very good at noticing a brand that's kind of floundering or not doing too well in a market that may not be associated with hip hop, bringing it to hip hop, gassing it up with their promotion, their charisma, their style, and then making it this huge event in hip hop and therefore in America and corporate pop culture. Jay-Z did it with Rockaware, convincing a multi-billion-dollar company in search of cool points to cough up a 9-figure sum for a generic product upon which he'd sprinkled his stardust. His move to get music streaming service Tidal also reminded us of his Armand de Brognac strategy, his previously unsuccessful champagne that he turned into a high-end item, where once again he purchased a generic European consumer product that Americans hadn't heard of, dressed it up, and peddled it as a high-end specialty item. Diddy did the exact same thing with Ciroc. Now, in the book, they interview a fine wine expert, somebody who's an expert on grapes and somewhat on liquor, and the author asks him, okay, so Ciroc's, one of its main selling points is that it's made from fine French grapes. You can check any Ciroc bottle, it says distilled from fine French grapes. And this is a brilliant marketing move because Diddy in the book, he describes, if you have a vodka that has a history of being made from grapes, which is kind of synonymous with high-end, obviously the wine history, stuff like that, why wouldn't you market that rather than potatoes, which 90% of vodkas is made from? Let's just be real, grapes and French grapes and things like that is 10 times more sexy than a potato. I don't care what brand of potato it is. There's no such thing as a sexy potato. But even crazier, the wine expert in the book says it's not even a special type of grape. It says fine French grapes. It's the cheapest grape you can get. I mean, it's not bad like a fart, but I mean, it's not an expensive grape. Most grapes from a costly Pinot Noir from Burgundy could be as much as 1,000 to 2,000% more than the cost of the grapes used in Ciroc. Wine expert says he figures the cost of a bottle of Ciroc is somewhere in the $7 to $10 range, meaning that you're making almost 3 times your money using grapes to make this vodka than you would with the equivalent usage of grapes in a Pinot Noir. Diddy applied that same sort of logic when he started promoting water with Mark Wahlberg in Aqua Hydrate. Just as grapes are sexier than potatoes, bottled water with an alkaline pH, the opposite of acidic, sounds like something you'd rather put in your body than the alternative, regardless of the science behind it. Again, the way that Diddy does this with vodka, water, etc., and the way that Jay-Z does it with clothes and does it with champagne, Dre does this with artists. People forget that Eminem was poor back in the hood of Detroit after having already released a very very good album, honestly, Infinite. After having already released an album, really his career is going nowhere, and he gets the stimulus package from Dre, who sees something in this undervalued asset of an artist who've already released an album, Poor in Detroit, in Eminem. Same thing with 50 Cent. He had already released an album and was kind of seen as industry poison. He had just been shot. He was seen as somebody that the labels didn't want to associate with when Dr. Dre found him. So these are people that can take naturally talented artists like an Eminem, like a 50 Cent, and take them even further than all of the stuff they've done to get to that point. It's similar with their brands, but the funny thing is this came out of necessity. Really, the reason these gentlemen are so powerful is because they were in an industry that was thinking backwards, and frankly, they just wouldn't let them in them offices. They really tried to connect and bring these people in corporate America, and it wasn't accepted. Hip-hop's top organizations were born out of a combination of gut feel and necessity. Dr. Dre, Diddy, Jay-Z, and their ilk founded record companies because at first they couldn't get deals with major labels. They launched their own clothing and liquor lines because mainstream brands wouldn't meet their compensation requirements for endorsements. We were forced to start these record labels out of trunks of cars and distribute music like that, says Carter. It's been this thing of forced entrepreneurship that turned into a significant amount of equity in these businesses. So this is the story of people that utilize their own unique skills and background, don't take no for an answer, and when they get the doors slammed in their face, they just build their own building next door. The original OG of hip-hop business, Russell Simmons, when told that the book was going to be called Three Kings, says, "Oh, that's good," pausing to ponder Diddy, Dre, and Jay-Z. They said, "Why don't I just do it myself?" So that is our review of Three Kings. Be sure to go buy this book. It's the first link in the video description box below. Super easy on Amazon. Be sure to go read it. There's crazier stories than even some of the stuff that I covered. Of course, join our notification gang, our Bell family. Subscribe with them notifications. And last, we like to end these episodes with a question. So I'm just curious, who is your favorite of the Three Kings and why? Tell me a little bit about why you're a supporter of these particular gentlemen. Most importantly, I want to say thank you for watching. Go buy the book, subscribe, answer the question, and I'll see you on the next one. Let's roll into the end credits movie style. I'm gone.